Well, welcome to another edition of Magic Gaming Esports Academy webinar series presented by Florida Blue. I'm Kendra Douglas, and today we have a pretty cool special guest joining the webinar, and Joe McMahon, the Associate Director of Sports, Live, and Gaming at Wavemaker. So, Joe, thank you for taking some time out of your day and joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So let's go ahead and just get started into tell us a little bit about yourself and just your backstory.
Yeah, so I've been at Wavemaker for like 2.5 years now. It'll be 3 years in the fall. Prior to that, I was working for some esports teams, but started my career in traditional sports, working for a minor league hockey team in a suburb of Dallas. The Allen Americans was the name of that team. So I had started there right after I graduated from the University of Texas. I actually graduated with a journalism degree, and I do nothing related to journalism now as technically, but I do write a lot of emails and PowerPoints and things like that. So I suppose I still use the degree practically. Um, Worked in like ticket sales and sponsorship sales for that minor league hockey team. Moved to LA, where I grew up in like 2017. Was working for a sponsorship sales agency there, and then that's how I got exposed to the world of esports and gaming in a professional capacity. I had grown up playing video games like most millennials, whether it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or like the NHL or NBA video games, SSX Tricky. But never really got into gaming as like a hobby or a passion point. So like after college, I would just play Halo with my buddies to stay in touch. Essentially, it's like we were just talking on the phone for 3 hours a night. But when I was at this sponsorship sales agency, we had a client in the gaming space called Allied Esports. We worked on a couple sponsorship deals at their esports arena in Las Vegas. So after having some success on that account, all industry, and I suppose I got poached. Sometimes it's a word with a negative connotation, but I got poached to go sell sponsorships for a different esports organization called Immortals, and then worked there for a bit. Pandemic hit, ended up working for an esports team called Evil Geniuses after that. And then now I switched teams essentially to the buy side instead of the sell side. And I've been here at Wavemaker, for the past 2.5 years.
There's so much to just dive into with that because I feel as if we have to go into the fact that you used to cover a small minor league, I guess, hockey team. Just what was that experience like, and kind of how did it set you up for, the positions and just going forward for your future now?
I mean, it's if anybody watching this has pledged a fraternity before, it's like the most fun you never want to have again. And that's kind of what that first job working in minor league hockey in a major league market was. Great stories, but you cut your teeth. You learn a lot about yourself in of the people that we'll call it like my class of colleagues that we were working together. Only a couple of us still work in the sports or entertainment industry, broadly speaking. Others have switched into different career paths because I think it's a skeleton crew at these minor league organizations, so you wear a lot of hats, not just as a lower level employee. The executives at the team were wearing like sponsorship sales hats and manager hats and accounting hats and like player ops hats at all times during the day. So it was a great way to get exposed to the various opportunities in the industry. Like I wouldn't have been able to move as seamlessly from ticket sales to sponsorship sales had I been at like a major league organization in like the NHL or NBA. Those opportunities are just a little bit more siloed. So I think that was a huge benefit, and just learning how to provide value from a sales perspective was crucial there because, like I said, it's a major league market, and you're not just selling against like other sports teams. Granted, there are like 8 professional sports teams, but then there's also college, and it's Texas, so Friday nights. We had Friday Night Lights, so you're competing against a lot. It's just sports, not to mention like even Busters and Netflix. So you really find ways to people excited about um, a sport or attending it from a entertainment perspective. So that's a part of my career I definitely look back on fondly. In the moment, oh, you sometimes you wake up, you're working for the 40th day in a row, and you're like, what am I doing here? Like it's so it's not a long term or wasn't a long term thing for me. But your first job's always going to be not you're not going to be closing $100 million deals at 23 years old. It just doesn't happen. Not today.
No, not at all. Since I also majored in journalism, broadcast journalism, and I remember they would tell me like, if you can get through your first job, which was of course like in the middle of nowhere, and it's like small time, like if you can get through just like through that, things will get easier, and you learn a lot. And it's so true, like you said, just kind of it shapes you and it molds you, and you kind of feel like you can just do more. You're like, I know I can do this, and you're eligible to do that because you've started kind of at a smaller end. Is that kind of like the mindset a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, you hone your craft when
Hmm.
you have to. Um,
Yeah.
and you are playing the sports industry is like notoriously not super high pay, especially early on in the careers, because there's much always going to be somebody lined up to take that job the same amount of pay if you don't want to. So you and at least in a sales role, there's obviously like commission implications there. So you find a way to get it done so that you can rent and eat or maybe go out to dinner when the team's on a road trip that you finally have a free weekend to hang out with friends. So um, you definitely really develop various skill sets too, whether that is from a sales perspective, from an organizational perspective. Like in college, like I was horrible at keeping a schedule. Then if you missed appointments or missed calls or like forgot it was like a kid's birthday at the game that day, like not something you want to have to like look a parent in the face and be like, hey, yeah, by the way, no cake, I forgot. Like, so you learn sometimes the easy way, sometimes the hard way, that you find organizational skills and things like that. So it's definitely something I'd recommend people do if they're looking at a career in like sports and entertainment. Like take whatever job you can get. You may not want to sell tickets for the rest of your life. I know I didn't either, but the term foot in the door can sometimes be looked down upon. But at the end of the day, you're still in there, you're in the room, you're talking to people, and you're learning. You don't think that you're going to be pigeonholed into like, oh, this is just a ticket seller for the rest of your career. I now do marketing across gaming culture, which is not something I thought in 2015 that I'd be doing now.
I was gonna kind of like segue into that of like, hearing that you started in sports, moving to gaming, did you even think that this career or this job was something that you could just dive into? And what was your first, I guess, thought when you heard that there was an opening for you in in the sports gaming world?
Um, I it really didn't come across my radar like as an industry until probably like my senior year of college. One of my classmates was a writer at Dot Esports, which is a widely known publication, and he went on to found his own publication called Win.gg. But he was talking about the international, the largest Dota tournament and some of the biggest prize pools in esports history with like 40 million in like 2019 or 2020. Um, so that's when it got put on my radar. I was like, oh, this is an industry. And then I had friends, the ones that I would play Halo with, they were watching like Pro Halo or um, influencers on Twitch. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I was exposed to it, and then started working at the sponsorship sales agency and had an esports client that made it much more real. And it's not like I joined that agency to work on esports specifically. Like we represented all kinds of sports and entertainment properties, whether it's like the Alamo Dome or some MLS teams, the LA Chargers, like Hollywood Bowl, Greek Theater, some music venues in LA. Like we did a lot, but esports was just one of those clients, and that's what sort of exposed me to this whole world. And I suppose I was one of the few people at the agency, which was very small. It was like less than 25 people across 3 offices. I was one of the few people that sort of like got it or had even some sense of a like passion behind it. So that's what sort of took me down this road that led to the working for the esports teams in-house to then working now at Wavemaker. It was part of it was just trying something new. I think after a while, I recognize like, hey, I'm one of the few people at this agency that can successfully articulate the value of an esports property. Then maybe there's a shot I could be pretty good at this and find my own niche, which is like niche is a relative term I see, but compared to traditional sports, like esports team or just like a Call of Duty team is very niche, but gaming as a whole is obviously super broad. So I started, in that all slice of like esports competitive venues, and then moved to teams, and then now touch all of it from publishers to teams, leagues, streamers, you name it.
That's so cool. And it seems like you've kind of really found your avenue and your way to kind of gravitate around this world. So, being at Wavemaker, can you talk about what you're doing now and just how you see this company continuing to grow within the gaming world and the esports world?
Absolutely. So, Wavemaker historically is a global media agency. So that's buying digital ads online or pre-roll, roll on YouTube, or like near radio, home billboards, like anything that you traditionally think about as like advertising, Wavemaker does. And then we have our smaller group internally called the Content and Partnerships Group right now, which that includes traditional sports, live events, and gaming. So traditional sports, like we manage DoorDash's partnership with NBA and a couple of the teams that they're partnered with as well. We were doing a lot of Coinbase's music festival activations in like 2022 across like EDC or Lollapalooza. That's our live events folks. And then from the gaming side, we're working across all aspects of gaming culture, whether that's the events, the DreamHack or TwitchCon, or whether that is partnering with LCS for Professional League of Legends, or the streamers like Mr. Beast or Tim the Tatman. So our day to day generally will. I like to position it as like a week to week because each day is just sometimes a little chaotic. So week to week, we will perform like basically 4 different areas. There's like the educational aspect of gaming marketing. Like a lot of our brand clients are new to, they don't necessarily understand what the adjacent possible opportunity is in the gaming space. So a lot of education. We'll do some strategy development as well. Hey, you are brand X and you want to reach this demographic. Well, we know that Call of Duty fans are more likely to buy your product than League of Legends fans are. So we'll help with the strategic vision of a brand. Then we'll negotiate the deals on their behalf. So, hey, we're going to sponsor this Call of Duty team, this Call of Duty event, and then these streamers, right? As an example. And then we will manage those partnerships after the fact, making sure all the stuff in the contracts, like social posts or event activations, things of that nature are actually delivered upon. And then we'll put together a recap to show how great it was and then do it all over again.
Has there ever been I was writing this down as things you were saying. Has there ever been a a group or a sport that you guys have had to redo the strategic branding? Or how do you go about just kind of when things aren't going exactly your way and having to go back to the drawing board? What does that process look like for you guys?
Every situation's different. Sometimes a brand will, in the middle of a contract, be like, "Hey, you know what? We have totally switched our strategy. We don't really care about like these metrics anymore. We were really big about like brand awareness and affinity before. Now we want to focus on like people actually like buying our products. It's less about the like audience sentiment." And so we'll talk with the partners, and part of establishing those partnerships is finding the right people to work with that are going to be good partners in that sense, where they're not going to be extremely like, no, 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 this is what you signed up for. Like, every contract, yeah, you have the contract there, but that's more to prevent like under delivery and over asking, not necessarily reworking things, I'd say, at least in a good partnership. So there have been times where like sometimes things change on the partner side, sometimes things change on the brand side, and you just work together to find out what that solution is if you're in the middle of a contract year and there's not really opportunity to like find new partners that would be a better fit necessarily, or just a different fit.
So, have you seen the world of esports and gaming marketing grow, or like how have you seen it grow from the time that you've started to now?
There's definitely more brands that are active in the space. It is such a massive space that it's hard to sometimes see that, because gaming is very, very broad. Like, we're talking gaming could mean a hardcore League of Legends player. It could also mean like the suburban mom that plays Candy Crush while she's waiting to pick her kid up
Oh,
from school. Like
that's
that
that's
is
true.
gaming
Yeah.
too. So if you're doing gaming advertising and you're serving these mobile ads on Candy Crush, like that's a part of it. Now, I think obviously with like mobile gaming, that's like its whole separate world. And when it comes to like esports specifically, it's definitely gone through cycles. When I first entered the industry, we'll say in 2017, and then full time in 2019, um, it was hot topic. You had traditional sports team owners that were investing heavily into whether it was like 2K League or into the Activision Blizzard leagues with Overwatch League and Call of Duty League, which were the like regionally or geographically franchised teams. Um, there's a lot of venture capital money being pumped into the space, so it put esports and gaming as a whole on this, underneath the spotlight. And then the pandemic also skyrocketed not just like esports viewership, but just gaming consumption as a whole. Because what else did people have to do? We weren't allowed to go outside. What are you gonna do? You're gonna play Super Mario for the 10th time, or find whatever new game. So there's definitely been like a big boom. There's a bit of a market correction going on right now. Like, you've probably seen there's been a lot of layoffs across every aspect of the gaming industry, from publishers to the hardware makers to um, media companies. So I think part of that is just the correction from the pandemic boom. But
Mhm.
it's definitely been on a steady growth pattern. Brands getting involved in the space are doing so more regularly. I think we're seeing new brands come in every year, and we're also seeing brands continue to do these activations uh, instead of just doing a one-off and being like, okay, cool, yeah, we did it, and check the box. Like, the brands really are now building out comprehensive gaming strategies instead of just saying, okay, yeah, cool, we're going to do this. And they're also hiring gaming experts, either internally at the brands or at their agencies represent them.
So, question, when you were going through the pandemic as well, did you see a little bit of a dip, or and how did you guys combat that? Or did you notice that, like you kind of mentioned, like people were at home, so like things were kind of maybe even steady for you. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, it was a weird time to be alive, but glad we are alive. So was interesting to see because obviously everything stopped.
Mhm.
But while the NBA and NHL, Major League Baseball, we're all trying to figure out like, hey, how do we finish the season or how do we start the season in this new environment? Within like a week and a half, Pro League of Legends was already back up and running and
Mm.
on ESPN, which I think that is where the lull wasn't as substantial for that. And granted, a lot of things changed too as the way that how people consumed it. Like, oh, you couldn't go in person, like TwitchCon or DreamHack, or PAX, these big gaming events that people look forward to attending every year, or that these game publishers would announce their new things. Like E3, for example, used to be sort of like the crown jewel gaming event of the industry every June in LA. And now it doesn't exist. It's it became obsolete essentially over the course of the pandemic because a lot of these publishers started doing their own showcases or they found other avenues to do it. So being a part of this event didn't seem as necessary as before. So it wasn't without its casualties,
Mhm.
by all means. But macro perspective, it was almost exclusively growth.
Hmm, that's interesting. And how has, I guess, the audience changed in the esports and gaming world? Have you noticed a new generation kind of entering into the space, or like where do you see it going?
We're definitely seeing a more even split amongst like male female demographics. Historically, like a lot of these gaming titles were heavily skewed male, and it still does skew like male 18 to 34. Like that is a good chunk of the like hardcore gaming audience or esports audience. But we also have to take that all with a grain of salt because a lot of times women don't like identify themselves as women for fear of like backlash or toxicity from various communities. So obviously still some work to do there from a like inclusivity perspective. Um, but gaming as a whole is becoming much more accessible for the general public as our phones get more and more powerful. You can run better games as these handheld devices like the Switch or a Steam Deck, and now PlayStation's coming out with a new handheld as well. Like these pieces of technology continue to become more affordable as opposed to a $600 new PlayStation or Xbox. But yeah, you're going to get more people engaged. So I think from a financial demographics perspective as well, seeing more people being able to engage with gaming culture. Whereas before it was, similar to like some of these like club sports in high
Mhm.
school where it's pay to play. So things are definitely evening out. I think because gaming is becoming more inclusive, we're seeing more women get involved, so it's more visible. There's obviously a lot of initiatives out there to keep promoting that messaging. Um, but yeah, I'd say it's everyone touches gaming in some sense, so it's hard to say like some people aren't a part of it. Like my mom plays Wordle every day. That's technically a mobile game. It's a puzzle
Yeah.
game, but it's a video game at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that younger seeing where you're at now, seeing what you're able to accomplish, and do you think younger you would have been like, wow, I didn't even know I could be in this space? I mean, this is something where, you don't traditionally think could be a career in a sense. And now you are making so much of this, a big, it's a big deal and you
Yeah.
play a big role in it. Did you think your younger self would even look at this and be like, this couldn't even happen? Like, what do you tell yourself?
Yeah, well, it depends how young too. Like 7-year-old me, like or 10-year-old me would probably be like, "Oh, that's crazy. That's cool."
Yeah.
Um, 17-year-old me would probably make fun of me. And then 22-year-old me would probably be like, "Actually, that's kind of interesting."
Mhm.
Um, you know, yeah, like I thought I was going to be a sportscaster when I
Mm.
first got into college. Halfway through, realized I didn't really want to do that. So I started looking at sports business stuff, and but then again, at 5 years old, I thought I was going to be a pro hockey player, not just a sportscaster. So it things change. So I might have a lot of explaining to do to my younger self. Be like, hey, no, trust me, this is pretty cool. You're gonna like it. It may not make much sense right now, but just trust me on this one.
In looking ahead, just what are some of the projects or things that you can talk with us about that you possibly are working on or that you're looking forward to going into this year?
Our team, we've got, 3 or 4 people on our gaming practice here at Wavemaker. And so we're always spread across like multiple clients. So what I'm working on is definitely by no means a like holistic picture of all the activity that our agency has going on across gaming culture and the marketing partnerships and advertising that we're doing. But we've brought on some new clients this year. We're looking forward to deploying those strategies. At least in the first half of the year, I think economic factors have sort of like slowed things down over the past 12 months, but we're starting to see things. There's a lot of tire kicking going on of like, oh, hey, what can we do over here? What can we do over there? And so events season is starting up, whether that is like music festivals or gaming events, obviously specific to my practice. So we've got PAX East coming up here at the end of this month, and there's pretty much a gaming event every month globally now through October. So those are always fun. It's great to connect in person in a predominantly online world. Specific to gaming, obviously, everybody's interconnected and online probably too often, but we all still scroll TikTok in our free time. So it's yeah, so a lot of exciting stuff there. We're working on some new agency pitches as well that have gaming angles that I can't really talk much more about than saying what I just did. So we're working on some agency of record pitches that involve gaming, which are exciting. Yeah, it's great to see sort of the broader brand marketer landscape starting to take real serious looks at the gaming space, where I think over the past 3 years been a sort of like maybe a bandwidth issue, or like they just didn't necessarily take it seriously. Like, oh yeah, those are some good numbers. Like, but like, how are we going to budget for this? Now brands are starting to carve out budget because they recognize that every like 90% of Gen Z are in touching gaming culture in some way, shape, or form, and Gen Alpha is going to be even more so than that. So it's a lot of momentum going forward for sure.
A couple of things that you touched on, one, brands allotting more money to the gaming world. How do you, to know that that is happening, what does that say just about the growth and just the level of how this is continuing to capture our world? We're doing this with you because this is a big deal, and we want other people to realize that there are opportunities and that people are, there's a space for you guys. So to know that brands are, allotting more money and really growing with the times, what does that say about just our culture and the growth of the gaming world?
Yeah, I think it's really just a coming of age. Like modern video games, like I think you could probably just say like until like Xbox Live
Mhm.
became a thing, like that sort of ushered in this more modern era of gaming. And then as like probably the next one's going to be like AR VR experiences that like back to kind of like an earlier point I had about the accessibility of the tech. Like VR equipment is expensive right now, and there's not a lot of games that are being made for VR because not a lot of people have them because they're expensive. So as that tech becomes more readily available and there's more games being put on them, that's going to probably be the next step. But to where we are now, to answer your question about sort of like the growth, I think it's just coming of age where like millennials are becoming parents, they have buying power now, and they're showing their kids like, oh yeah, I used to play Tony Hawk growing up, or I used to play Kingdom Hearts, or I loved League of Legends when I was in high school, so World of Warcraft. So those traditions are, we'll call them traditions, are being passed down to an alpha. And Gen Z grew up staunchly in the like internet age. Like
Mhm.
they're all on social media, they're all like connected 24/7, and a lot of that is through gaming. There's so many people that have like friendships that were made just through games, and then they finally meet in real life like 2, 3 years later at a gaming event, typically. But I think it's really just a signal of sort of like changing trends. A lot of kids these days, they don't want to grow up and be astronauts. They want to grow up and be YouTubers
Yeah,
or
right.
TikTokers,
Yeah.
right? So it's just changing trends to where like, you know, this is really like the first sort of like multi-generational situation that we have here with Gen Alpha, Z, and millennials that were really in the internet age in their like more formative years. I think that it's only going to continue to grow because of the ability for, 6-year-olds building their own like video games on Roblox at 6 years old. Like I had no idea how to even start to think about how to build a video game when I was 6. So yeah, it'll be super interesting to see sort of like, how it continues to grow, but I have no doubt that it will.
Being a part of so many live gaming events, I'm interested, like, what's your favorite part, or what's it like, the process of getting everything ready and then just kind of seeing what comes into fruition with these live gaming events?
Live events, a great part is the like networking opportunities that
Mhm.
you come across, whether that's at like after party or just like walking the show floor and by these various booths. But I think, I was at TwitchCon last year in Las Vegas and saw like multiple music brands were activating. Like Roland was one of them specifically, and they do audio equipment. Because you don't think about it necessarily. Why is a music brand activating at Con? But they make this audio equipment that a lot of streamers use for their
Mm.
streams. And there's obviously like a whole music community on Twitch as well. So I think it's seeing those like, oh, aha moments, I guess, light bulb moments. And then also sort of getting inspired by some of the other activations that you see. Like when I'm at an event, I'm taking mental or like literal notes of like about what certain brands are doing. And I think,
Mhm.
oh, that would be great for this client. We'll tweak it this way and make that. Or it's like, oh, what if they did this and built upon that? So I mean, there's a lot to like enjoy about these
Yeah.
events. And yeah, the lead up to them is pretty crazy. And then once it actually like happens, and then you see all these people crowded around the Chevron booth at TwitchCon that we had put together, that and they're all going crazy for these big moments with streamers like Thomas. Like that's, I don't know, feels good.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe it does. And for those who, are going to come back and watch this, a lot of them are students. What would be your advice, or just, yeah, what would be your advice that you'd give them if they are seeing what you're doing and they want to kind of get into that avenue?
I'd say yes to things is a good starting point. Like you're gonna have to have a job at somehow you need to pay for things in life. That's how society works. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to take on whether it's a project at a job you work at, or take your own initiative and be like, hey, I put together these just sort of like ideas about how I think brand X could do this. It's like I don't feel like your role as it's outlined in your job description shouldn't be a limiting factor to what you can or can't do in any specific organization where you're working, whether that is working as like a barista or whether that is working as like a senior associate at an events activation agency. um, Saying yes to these opportunities, which will more opportunities come around hopefully, but you do never know. So being
Mhm.
able to find it as a way to learn always is what I would focus on. You may not ace it, but if you learned something, if you took away some sort of value from whatever situation you were in, I think you can count that as a win.
Mhm.
Advice was given to me a long time ago. It said, now this probably isn't like this will be received with mixed reviews, but don't let school get in the way of your education.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like, hell, I have this test tomorrow, I got to study, but I have this opportunity to go to this happy hour where there's going to be sports industry executives there. It'd be a great opportunity to network.
Mm.
Probably going to learn more from that networking event than you are from whatever biology test you have the next day. Like
Yeah.
that's really the moral of the story there. It's not to say like schools for suckers, don't study. Yeah, definitely like hard too.
Yeah. No, but it's true. I think that like I learned a lot from people who were my mentors or events that I went to because it was very much about who you knew and getting your foot in the door and making those connections. So I can see, both sides of it because yes, education's still important, but very much networking and understand really saying yes. Like you mentioned, we talked a little bit about earlier, like you're working for a minor league hockey team and now you're in this position where you get to work with so many different brands. So that is so cool. Now, is there anything that you wish that you could be doing that you haven't been able to do just yet? Or is that in like the plans also? Like, are there any things you'd working on that you wish you could be working on or wish you could do, but you haven't done just yet?
Yeah, I think there is a lot more potential for the intersection of gaming, tech, and music than is currently being explored right now. I think there's like music is like a passion of mine in a non-professional sense.
Uh-huh.
So I foresee myself at some point in my life exploring how like whether it's wellness tech and gaming and music and how it all sort of intertwines. I think there's a lot to be done in that space from a like fandom perspective, from a like biological perspective. Like there's a lot going on there that I'd be excited to explore.
Okay, okay. I like that. We'll have to like do like a 10-year recap
Yeah,
or something.
yeah,
Year
yeah. Where are
recap.
they now?
Yeah, where are they now? Like, did you actually mesh together the goals that you were hoping to do? That's so cool. And I guess like before we kind of like wrap things up and let you go, just for you and where you're at now, just talk a little bit about just the struggles that you possibly have faced too within the position you are now, but how you were able to overcome them, or what are some struggles that you were able to overcome and were able to get past?
Hmm. I think it's good to set boundaries. Like I just talked about how, hey, say yes to things, but also like you can oversubscribe yourself. It's easier and easier to do these days with all that we have going on. Where just watching Love Is Blind and then scrolling TikTok and then switching to Instagram, then Twitter, and then right, like that's we're oversubscribing our attention, and then that's no different in the professional workplace too. So being able to like set those boundaries for yourself and know what your limit is. The tough part is it's hard to know what your limit is until you reach it. So like you'll have to probably get there eventually, and you never wish that on anybody, but like that is something that I've had to learn over the past like couple of years to where it's important to like make sure you're able to keep treading water instead of get if you're thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, I definitely like that, and I have been keeping up with Love Is Blind, so I
Yeah.
am that person.
I think the reunions. I don't know when this comes out, but I think the reunion shows tonight. So
Yes,
it's
2 AM or something
big
like that.
stuff.
Yeah, I will definitely be catching on to this reunion, so
Right?
that'll be me. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. Is there a way that people can connect with you on social media or any of your social media platforms that people are able to connect with you on?
Yeah, LinkedIn definitely the best place. I'm also on Twitter if you want to follow me there. It's not really like great content from like a professional perspective. I tweet about eating goldfish and things like that. So LinkedIn probably the best for like the context of this. But Joe McMahon or Joe McMahon IV if you just want to type it into the URL.
That's awesome, and it's okay. I don't always tweet about basketball. Some days I tweet about Love is Blind. So if people go
Oh,
on mine, they're gonna be like, "Who is Kendra?"
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And this has been another edition of Magic Gaming Esports Academy webinar series presented by Florida Blue. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to follow Magic Gaming at Magic Gaming on Twitter and on Instagram. And thank you again, Joe. And make sure you guys check in a couple weeks for our next episode.